August 10, 1945. War Department Building, Washington, D.C. The corridors still smell faintly of cigarette smoke and hot ink. Clerks hurry past with armfuls of files. Uniforms brush against civilian suits, and somewhere a typewriter machine guns, another memo about surrender terms and occupation plans. Behind a door marked simply confidential, a junior officer eases into a cramped records room. Second Lieutenant James Caldwell balances a cardboard file box against his chest, the weight of stamped paper heavier than it looks. He sets the box down on a steel table, the metal cool beneath his palms. The overhead light hums. Dust motes drift between the bulb and the folders as he pries back the lid. Inside are orders, telegrams, target lists. The top file is edged in red and stamped with a single word SACRET. Beneath that in tight black letters sits a name. Caldwell has already heard more in the last week than in his whole life. Truman Harry S., President. He sighs, pulls out the folder and opens it carefully. Thin onion skin pages whisper under his fingers. There are notes from General Grove's briefings from the Joint Chiefs and copies of radiograms transmitted in the days since the world learned what happened to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Caldwell flips past the familiar words: new weapons special bomb, unprecedented destructive power. He has read enough summaries of Little Boy and Fat Man to recite them in his sleep. Then his eyes snag on a line of type near the bottom of one page. UBJECTFUTUR USEOFATOMICW EIPONS INTHEPACIFICTHEIA Below that, a short paragraph, the kind of concise language only generals and presidents seem able to write when the fate of cities is on the table. He reads it twice before the meaning lands. Should hostilities continue, priority target to be as follows: 1. Kokura. He stops. Kokura. Not Hiroshima. Not Nagasaki. Another name. Another city. Number 1 on the list. He whispers it aloud, tasting the syllables. Kokura. It means nothing to him at first, just another Japanese city in a war that is supposedly ending. But the fact that it sits at the top of a priority target list dated after 2 atomic bombs have already fallen makes the back of his neck prickle. Caldwell reaches into the box and pulls another folder, this one stamped with the insignia of the 20th Air Force. Inside are target maps. He unfolds one, the paper crackling. A grid of Kyushu fills the page. Fukuoka. Shimonoseki. And there, circled in thick black grease pencil, is a city he has never thought twice about. KOKURAAR. AA. Latitude. Longitude. Industrial districts shaded in gray. Arsenal steel works and chemical plants annotated in small, neat script. A penciled note in the margin: high-value minimal blast shadow from prior AF operations. He imagines it as he has been trained to imagine all targets. A clear summer morning in 1945. Smokestacks along the Murasaki River. The sprawling yards of the Kokura Army Arsenal where workers in stained uniforms feed coal into furnaces and bolt steel onto guns that will never see the front lines in time. Tramcars rattling through narrow streets filled with clerks and machinists. Children in wooden clogs clutching their school bags, glancing up nervously every time an engine drones in the distance. None of them knowing their city sits at the top of a list on the president's desk. Caldwell turns the map over. On the back, a typed list of potential special targets. Kokura, Niigata, Nagasaki. Dates and readiness estimates for additional special bombs. Another note: tentative window for third operation, mid to late August, pending assembly and field conditions. He exhales slowly. You standing over his shoulder would feel the same crawling unease. 2 atomic blasts have already erased 2 cities from the map. The emperor's government is wavering. Rumors of surrender swirl through these very halls. And yet here in black and white is proof that the machinery for a third strike is still grinding forward. Kokura was not some afterthought. It was not a backup scribbled in at the last minute. On paper and orders bearing Truman's authority, it was next. He rifles deeper into the box. There are radiograms from Tinian, the island airbase that has suddenly become the most important patch of coral on Earth. Messages from the 509, the composite group, references to pit assembly, implosion core, fusing, and detonation tests. In one cable, a colonel reports that the next special weapon can be ready for operational use within days, weather permitting. Targets as previously designated. Caldwell pauses the classification stamps and cold phrasing blurring for a moment. He looks back to the word that started the itch in his mind. Kokura. What did this city look like at that exact moment across the ocean and an entire culture away? The war is almost over. Some neighborhoods still lie intact while others bear the scars of conventional raids. The sirens are quieter now. The night blackouts a routine nuisance instead of a terror. Families huddle around dim lamps whispering about rumors from Hiroshima that no one believes, not fully. And yet unseen men in Washington and New Mexico and on a small island in the Pacific have already marked Kokura for annihilation. Caldwell closes the folder, sets it gently on the table and presses his fingertips into the grain of the steel. He knows these documents will disappear again into safes and vaults for years, maybe decades. The American public will read headlines about surrender and victory. Japan will submit. Occupation forces will march down foreign streets. But somewhere in these boxes, in these neat paragraphs and circled targets, is a different story. A city that never knew it was next. A strike that never came, not because of mercy, but because history turned a few degrees at the last possible moment. Outside, a car horn bleats on Constitution Avenue. Inside, under the humming light, the name remains on the paper, waiting for someone someday to understand what it means. Kokura, the almost third victim, the target Japan never knew about. August 9, the 1945. Early morning. Kokura, northern Kyushu. Mist clings to the Murasaki River like a damp blanket. The chimneys of the Kokura arsenal exhale slow columns of smoke into a sky that is already gray with summer haze. Coal dust hangs in the air. Somewhere, a factory whistle shrieks thin and metallic, cutting through the low rumble of machinery. In the narrow streets, near the river, shutters rattle open. A grocer drags crates of withered vegetables onto the sidewalk. A boy in a frayed school uniform tightens the strap on his book bag, glancing up at the clouds as if looking for a sign. You hear it almost before he does at first, just a distant vibration in the air. A low, steady drone. Adults pause. Heads turn toward the south. On the rooftop of a 3-story warehouse, an air defense warden squints into the murk. The sun is already bright, but the heat mixed with factory smoke and the residues of recent raids turn the sky into a white, gauzy curtain. He reaches for his binoculars, the leather strap sticky against his neck, and presses the lenses to his eyes. Nothing. Just haze. He hesitates. He knows the Americans usually bomb at night here, or in large formations that no one could possibly miss. This sound is different. One engine, two, he cannot tell. On the outskirts of the city, along the sidings that feed the arsenal complex, workers shuffle toward the gates. Some of them still remember the bombing of nearby Yahata, the firestorms, the charred skeletons of factories. Kokura has been lucky so far. Light damage. Nothing like Hiroshima, they have heard. Nothing like that city where, according to rumor, the sun fell to earth. A woman in a faded kimono grips her daughter's hand a little tighter as the noise grows. Above them, just beyond the reach of the eye, a silver B-29 named Boxcar pushes through the cloud deck. In the cramped belly of the bomber, A bulbous implosion weapon rests in its cradle, armored and wired, held fast by bolts and prayers. Major Charles Sweeney, sweating in the cockpit, glances at his instruments and then out through the smeared canopy. "Where is it?" he mutters. Beside him, the navigator traces their course with a pencil, dragging the tip across a target map that shows Kokura in clean, crisp lines. Bomb run headings. Aim points. Arsenal rooftops. "Should be right beneath us, Major." Sweeney looks again. Just clouds, haze, and something else now rising from far below. Smoke thick and oily from previous conventional raids and from fires set deliberately in nearby cities as a desperate attempt to confuse American bombers. Down below, the warden paces, the roof listening. He cannot see the plane, but the noise is right above him, somewhere behind the white veil. He raises a hand half-heartedly, as if he might wave it away. No sirens wail. There is no time. Inside Boxcar, the bombardier hunches over his sight, searching for the arsenal complex. The procedure is drilled into his muscles. The aircraft must make a visual run. He must see the target with his own eyes, put the crosshairs on the aiming point, and only then can this weapon be loosed. But all he sees is soup. Nothing. "I got nothing," he snaps into his interphone. They make another pass. Down in the city, workers pause between machines as the sound crescendos, then fades, then returns. People glance at one another, uneasy. A child points at the sky. A shopkeeper mutters that it must be reconnaissance, just another American plane taking photographs. Boxcar circles again. Fuel is burning away. The pilot can feel every second as a tug in his gut. He knows there is another target on his list, another city that can be struck if Kokura cannot be bombed. But he also knows the primary order in his flight plan, a simple line typed in all capitals. TARGETONEK, OKURA. He makes a third run. The engines thrum. Dials jitter. Sweat trickles down his back. Still nothing. The bombardier's view is blocked, the arsenal, hidden under a smear of smoke and cloud and pure bad luck. "We are not going to get a clear shot," the bombardier finally growls. The plane rocks slightly as Sweeney adjusts course. Then we go to the secondary. Inside the aircraft, no one says the name out loud at first. It hangs unspoken in the crowded air between them. Then the navigator, tracing lines with his pencil again, breaks the silence. "Nagasaki." The pilot nods once hard. Far below on that warehouse roof, the warden lowers his binoculars as the drone begins to recede. The sound weaves itself into the distance and blends with the ordinary noises of the city. Someone laughs nervously behind him. "What was it?" another warden asks. "Nothing," he lies. "They missed us." And Kokura, this city of chimneys and foundries and narrow streets, exhales. Workers go back to their machines. Children hurry to school. The woman in the faded kimono releases her daughter's hand. They do not know that they have just lived through a moment that will be dissected in war rooms and memoirs for generations. That a combination of weather, smoke, and timing has spared them from the same fate that hours later will engulf Nagasaki in a blinding light. No one on the ground here knows what was in the belly of that plane, or how close it came to opening over their heads instead of a city an hour's flight away. They think perhaps that Kokura's luck has held. What they cannot imagine is that somewhere thousands of miles away in Washington, their city's name has already been written onto another list. Newer, colder. A list that looks beyond even the horror about to be unleashed on Nagasaki. Kokura is not just the city that almost became the second victim. On that paper in the War Department under Truman's hand, it is marked again. Target 1 for the next bomb. August 11, the 1945. Northfield, Tinian Island. The runway is already steaming under the Pacific sun. Heat rises off the coral, distorting the lines of Park B-29S into wavering silver mirages. Men move between them in a slow practice dance, pushing bomb carts, checking tires, hauling ammunition. In one corner of the sprawling airfield, separated from the regular bomb dumps, sits a fenced enclosure guarded by Marines with loaded rifles. Inside, beneath canvas awnings and makeshift sheds, men in khaki and coveralls work with a kind of nervous precision. They call this place the assembly area. To most of the thousands of airmen on Tinian, it is just a restricted zone you don't ask about. But the men inside know exactly what they are building. On a wooden table darkened by sweat stains, a young ordnance officer named Captain Robert Feldman bends over a clipboard. His pencil moves down a typed checklist: HIGHEXPLO, SIVELANSCAST, INGS, INSPE, CTED, FIRINGUNITTESTED, CORICONPAN. He pauses at that last line and glances up. Near the back of the enclosure, under a tent lit by bare bulbs, a group of scientists from Los Alamos, clustered around a metal crate, are arguing in low, tense voices. Feldman cannot hear the words, but he recognizes the tone. The same tight edge he heard before Hiroshima, before Nagasaki. They are talking about the next one. In theory, it is simple. Another implosion weapon. Same basic design as the bomb that obliterated Nagasaki 2 days ago. The material is being prepared. Shipping schedules have been drawn up. Estimates have been made. If the war somehow drags on, a third bomb could be ready for combat in a matter of weeks. Feldman knows all this, not because he is a scientist, but because the paperwork keeps landing on his desk. Supply requests. Security memos. A signal from Washington that he has read twice the words etched in his memory. Prepare to receive additional special components. Priority target planning to proceed as per existing directive. Primary Kokura. Kokura again. A city he has never seen marked once more as primary in a language of euphemism and understatement. He watches as one of the Los Alamos men glasses, slipping down his nose, lifts the lid of the crate just enough to peer inside. There is something almost reverent in the way he moves, as if afraid that even looking too long might trigger what they have built. Somewhere overhead, a B-29 lifts off engines, screaming. Men shade their eyes, watching it climb into the sky. Feldman doesn't bother. He is thinking ahead to another mission briefing that has not yet been scheduled but already exists in the logic of the war. He can picture it. A dimly lit Quonset hut near the runway. A chalkboard at the front with words written in block capitals. 509, the composite group. Special mission. Target K, OKURA. Men in flight suits filing in dog tags, clinking. The smell of coffee and sweat and aviation fuel. The briefing officer tapping a long wooden pointer against a map of Kyushu tracing the inbound route, the bomb run, the turn to home. You can almost hear him now, his voice dry and steady. Primary target is the Kokura Arsenal Complex. Same weapon type as Nagasaki. Visual bombing only. Secondary target, if conditions prevent a visual run, will be... The sentence hangs there unfinished, because no one in this moment on this hot August morning knows if they will ever need to say it. On the far side of the world in Washington, the decision is being weighed. The Oval Office feels smaller when it is full of generals. Truman sits behind his desk, fingers steepled as the men in uniform stand or sit around the room, hats on their knees. A fan whirs lazily overhead, pushing hot air from one side of the office to the other. On the desk in front of him lies a folder much like the ones Caldwell handled in the records room. Inside are the same phrases: future operations, additional special bombs, priority target Kokura. General Groves, heavyset and blunt, explains in clipped sentences. Production schedules, core fabrication timelines, shipping routes from New Mexico to San Francisco, then across the ocean by cruiser. We can have the next device ready for operational use by the end of the month, Mr. President, he says. After that, another in September. With your authorization, we can continue to use them against strategic targets until the Japanese accept unconditional surrender. Truman's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. Over the last week, he has seen photographs no one outside this room will see for years. Hiroshima flattened. Nagasaki, a charcoal ring around a vanished center. He has read the medical reports, the descriptions of burns and shadows and people who simply stop. He glances at a typed sheet tucked into the folder, the one listing potential future targets. Kokura is first. Do they know? He asks suddenly. Not about Kokura. About Japan. A general clears his throat. We have dropped leaflets, sir. We have broadcast warnings. They have received some information about the nature of the weapon. Not about the next one, Truman says quietly. Silence gathers in the office like a storm cloud. Outside in the corridors of the War Department, Caldwell hurries past with his arms full of files, unaware that the conversation he imagined when he read those target lists is happening in almost the exact words he guessed. Untynian Feldman jots down another note on his clipboard: TENT a TIVEET, a CEA CIAL COMPONEANT SPENDING. He underlines pending twice. In Kokura, evening shadows stretch across the river. Children chase one another between tram tracks. Factory workers trudge home, wiping coal dust from their faces. The warden from the warehouse roof sits on a stool in his tiny kitchen, slurping soup, telling his wife about the strange unseen plane that circled the city 2 days ago. I thought for a moment this was it, he says with a crooked smile, that our luck had run out. She frowns, ladling more broth into his bowl. Don't talk like that. He shrugs, but the memory lingers. The sound of engines above the haze. The way the air itself seemed to vibrate. None of them knows that men are sitting in faraway rooms, arguing over whether that sound will ever return this time, carrying something even worse than anyone in Kokura can imagine. For now, Kokura lives in a strange, invisible state. On maps and in memos, it is already targeted again, the crosshairs drawn and the bomb tentatively assigned. But in reality, its streets are intact, its chimneys still belching smoke into the summer sky. The third bomb waits only in parts and calculations, and shipping manifests, and pending orders. The decision that will determine whether it ever becomes more than that is balancing on a knife edge in a single man's mind. And inside a file box in a records room down the hall, the paper that declares Kokura as primary target sits quietly ink drying, already part of a story no one outside a handful of offices has begun to tell. August 13, the 1945. Night. Northfield, Tynian. The island is strangely quiet. There are no special mission briefings taking place in the Quonset huts tonight. No B-29 crew is sitting in folding chairs, watching an officer point at Kokura on a map. The assembly area is dim, its canvas awnings fluttering in the trade wind tools hung up on hooks. Captain Feldman walks the perimeter out of habit, clipboard under his arm. The Marines at the gate nod him through, barely glancing at his badge now. Everyone is tired. Everyone is watching the radio. He stops in front of a wooden crate stenciled with vague phrases. NOSE, ASS, EMBLY, IGHEX, PLOSIV, ECOMPONE, and TS. The core material is still far away, not yet mated, not yet anything more than potential. In his pocket is a folded signal from Washington received hours ago. He has read it enough times that the words now hover in his mind even without the paper. Hold in abeyance preparations for immediate operational use of additional special bombs. Await further instructions. It does not say stop. It does not say the word never. It simply curls the process back on itself, pausing it like a film reel. Feldman tilts his head back and looks at the sky. Somewhere out there, over Japan, other B-29s still fly conventional raids. The war is not officially over. Not yet. But everyone can feel a change, a loosening of something that has been drawn tight for too long. He thinks of Kokura, of the map pinned in the target room, of the neat circle drawn around the arsenal district. For the first time, he wonders if he will ever see that map used again. On Tanian, things are waiting. In Japan, things are cracking. Tokyo. The same night. In an underground shelter beneath the Imperial Palace, the air is close and smells of sweat and old paper. Electric lamps cast harsh light on lacquered tables. The walls seem to lean inward as men argue in urgent overlapping voices. The Big Six, Japan's top leaders, are split down the center. Some insist on continuing the war, hoping for better surrender terms, for mediation, for anything that preserves the Kokutai, the national polity. Others stare at the reports from Hiroshima and Nagasaki and see only futility. A document lies open among the ashtrays and teacups. It lists the damage to Nagasaki in blunt, bureaucratic phrases. A percentage of the city destroyed. Industry lost. Dead and missing estimated. No one here has seen the aerial photos yet. They only have words and numbers. But the numbers are enough. In a far corner of the shelter, a junior officer kneels by a radio receiver, headphones clamped to his ears, scribbling notes as broadcasts filter in from outside. B-29 flights. Intercepts. Rumors of further special attacks. He has heard whispers from an intelligence officer earlier that day. The Americans may have more of these weapons. They may use them again. On another city. Maybe on several. He writes the thought in the margin of his notes without realizing it. Next target unknown. He is wrong. Somewhere in a building he will never see, the next target has a name. Kokura. And in Kokura itself that same night, the city lies under a blackout sky. Windows are shielded, lamps dimmed. It is a ritual everyone has performed so often that they no longer think about it. But tonight feels different. On a narrow residential street, not far from the river, the air defense warden sits on his stoop, his helmet resting on his knee. His wife has gone to bed. His daughter murmurs in her sleep behind the paper screens. He smokes a thin, bitter cigarette and listens. Every sound is magnified in the darkness. A distant train. A dog barking. The creak of wooden beams cooling after the heat of the day. He remembers the mysterious plane, the one that circled and vanished. Since then, word has reached Kokura about Nagasaki. Not through official channels at first, but through whispers. A railroad man claimed that a train came in from the south carrying burned refugees, their clothes fused to their bodies. A cousin in a nearby town heard that Nagasaki was gone, though what gone means no one can quite explain. Some say it was a new kind of bomb. Others say the Americans used poison gas. A few quieter voices talk about a single flash brighter than the sun. The warden drags on his cigarette and looks up at the stars peeking through the haze. Could that have been them? He wonders. Could that circling plane have carried the same thing? He will never know how close he is to the truth. Washington, D.C., August 14, 1945. The corridors hum with a different kind of energy now. Not frantic, but expectant. Typists pound out copies of draft surrender announcements. Staff officers carry armfuls of cables marked URGENT. In a more formal conference room not far from the Oval Office, an aide lays a new document on the polished table. It is a summary of intercepted Japanese communications. There are hints, cautious at first, then clearer, that Tokyo is finally leaning toward acceptance of the Allied terms. President Truman reads in silence. His glasses glint in the overhead light. He thinks of the conversation from days earlier, of groves and production schedules and maps with circled cities. He thinks of the photographs of two cities turned to ash. A Navy admiral speaks about blockade. A general speaks about invasion plans that will now perhaps be dusted off and then carefully shelved instead of enacted. No one in this room mentions Kokura by name. They talk in broader terms now. Further use of the weapon. Demonstration versus necessity. Moral considerations. At one point, Truman lifts his head. "We will continue conventional operations as needed," he says. "But as for these special bombs, I do not want to see another city wiped out unless there is no other way to end this war." The words are not yet in order. Not formally. But they are the beginning of one. Down the hall in the records room, Caldwell is back at his steel table. The box with the red-stamped folders sits open in front of him again. He has been instructed to reorganize certain files, to prepare them for a higher level of classification. He lifts the page that lists Kokura as primary target for future special operations. For a moment, he is tempted to slide it aside to mark it somehow, to leave a breadcrumb for some future historian. But that is not his job. He files it where he has been told, in a section that fewer eyes will see. The paper whispers as it slips into place among dozens of others. On Tinian, the Marines lock the gate to the assembly area. The Los Alamos men wait by the radio. Feldman pours himself coffee as black as oil and stares at his untouched clipboard. In Kokura, the warden finally stands, stubs out his cigarette, and steps inside, sliding the door closed behind him. The night remains dark. No sirens, no engines, just the steady pulse of a city still alive, still unaware that its fate is being decided thousands of miles away by men who have never walked its streets. Right now, in mid-August, Kokura exists in a fragile space between two realities. In one, the war continues for months. The third bomb is assembled, the 509 flies again, and the sky over the Murasaki River erupts into a second sun. In the other, surrender comes within days. The bomb components remain only that, components. The target lists slowly lose their power. History is about to choose. August 15, the 1945. Morning. Kokura. The day begins with humidity that clings to skin and clothes as it always does in August. The Murasaki River moves in its slow brown curve through the city. Factories sit heavy and dark against the brightening sky. The air defense warden is halfway through his usual circuit, checking fire buckets and sandbags when someone yells from an upstairs window. "Radio," they say, "there will be an important broadcast." He frowns. There are always broadcasts. Bulletins about air raids, speeches from Tokyo, stiff words about sacrifice and perseverance. But there is a tone in the voice that makes him climb the narrow stairs two at a time. In a cramped apartment, neighbors crowd around a wooden radio set. The room smells of sweat and tatami mats. The volume knob is turned as far as it will go. Static hisses and crackles. Then a voice comes through. Thin. High. Formal. It takes the warden a moment to understand what he is hearing. The emperor himself speaking to the nation. The language is archaic and wrapped in courtesies. No one in the room moves. Children are pulled closer to their mothers. Men bow their heads without realizing it. The warden listens to the strange, distant phrases. Endure the unendurable. Bear the unbearable. Words about a new and most cruel bomb and the war situation, not necessarily to Japan's advantage. Surrender. The word is not said plainly, but everyone feels it settle on them like a weight. For a long moment after the broadcast ends, no one speaks. The only sound is the faint ticking of the radio tubes cooling. Then the room erupts into questions. What does it mean? Will the bombing stop? Will the Americans come here? What will happen to the soldiers at the front, to the colonies, to the emperor himself? The warden steps back into the hallway. Through the open window, he can hear the city beginning to react. Somewhere, someone sobs. Somewhere else, a man shouts in anger. A woman laughs in a thin, hysterical burst before covering her mouth. The warden thinks of the circling plane, of Hiroshima, of Nagasaki, of the rumors that something beyond ordinary bombs has changed the shape of the war. He looks up at the clear blue sky. There are no planes, no sirens, just sunlight on the tile roofs of a city that was twice named on lists for destruction and has somehow slipped through history's fingers. Tinian. The same day, Captain Feldman is in the mess when the announcement filters through the base. At first, it is just a rumor carried on the air like Heat Tokyo Radio has broadcast something. The Emperor has spoken. Japan is giving up. He sets his coffee down and stands. Conversations around him surge and break. Laughter, disbelief, profanity, cheers. A few men stare straight ahead, calculating silently how many friends this news has saved from future missions, from future Pacific beaches. In the operations building, officers gather around a receiver tuned to Allied intercepts. An English translation of the Imperial rescript is already being prepared. A major strides into the assembly area. Minutes later, boots ringing on the packed earth. Captain Feldman. Feldman straightens. Sir. The major hands him a thin piece of paper. The ink is still damp. Effective immediately, all preparations for further operational use of special weapons are to be suspended. Components are to remain under maximum security. Await detailed directives regarding storage and disposition. There is no drama in the wording. No acknowledgement of the moral and historical weight behind the order. Just military precision. That is, that the major says. Feldman looks past him toward the crates and tents where men from Los Alamos stand in small groups talking quietly. One of them, the man with the glasses that always slip down his nose, meets Feldman's eyes. They exchange a look that contains too many things to name. Relief, unease, the knowledge that what they built worked too well and that the world will never be the same. He folds the paper carefully and tucks it into his clipboard. So Kokura is off the hook, one of the sergeants mutters under his breath. Feldman glances at him. For now, he says softly. Washington, D.C. The sound in the War Department building is different today. There is still the clatter of typewriters and the shuffle of footsteps, but beneath it all runs a current of something new. Victory. In the Oval Office, Truman has just given his own announcement. The Japanese government has accepted the Allied terms. The war will end. Later, in a smaller meeting with his senior advisors, he circles back to the subject that has haunted every conversation since Hiroshima. I want it clearly understood, he says, voice flat with fatigue, but still firm that no further atomic bombs are to be dropped. We have shown what this weapon can do. The enemy is surrendering. That is enough. There are nods around the table. A few quiet objections are raised, couched in hypotheticals about future contingencies, about signaling strength to the Soviets, about keeping options open. But the decision is made. In a corridor, one floor below Caldwell carries yet another file box into the records room. His sleeves are rolled up. Sweat darkens his collar. Victory or not, the paperwork has not slowed. He sets the box down and opens it. Inside, among memoranda about occupation plans and demobilization schedules, are the now familiar documents from the Manhattan Engineer District and the 20th Air Force. One folder contains updated orders. He pulls it out and flips through. There, in dry language, the thing he felt forming days ago is now written down. Further use of atomic weapons in this conflict is not presently authorized. Target planning documents will be retained under highest classification for future reference. Tucked behind that memo is the page he saw before. Priority target list. Kokura at the top. He stares at it for a moment longer than necessary. Then he smooths it, returns it to its place, and slides the folder into a section marked with a thicker, darker tab. CCESSRESTRICTED. The file drawer closes with a dull metallic sound. In Kokura, the streets fill with a kind of dazed motion. Some citizens tie white cloth around their brows in mourning for the lost war. Others drift unsure whether to feel relief, shame, or fear. The air defense warden stands at the edge of the river as afternoon light turns the water to molten gold. He has heard that there will be no more raids, that the planes will stop coming. It feels unreal. He thinks of all the nights on rooftops, the drills, the bucket lines, the endless scanning of the sky. Of that one morning when the engines droned overhead and the target never appeared. His city is scarred in places, but still standing. Chimneys still smoke. Trams still rattle. Children still chase each other along the embankment. He does not know that on distant desks, his home has been twice circled in pencil as a place that might have ceased to exist entirely. For Kokura, the war ends, not with fire, but with a radio broadcast and a sky that stays mercifully, inexplicably empty. In vaults and cabinets and ocean away, the explanation sleeps in darkness. Pages with neat typescript, maps with black circles, signatures, a name at the top of a list that will remain hidden for years. Kokura has survived, but it is not yet allowed to know how narrowly. July 1964. National Archives, Washington, D.C. The reading room smells of paper and polish and the faint ozone of fluorescent lights. Microfilm readers hum softly. Researchers whisper over stacks of declassified files that were once locked behind steel and secrecy. At a table near the window, a young historian named Ellen Morris adjusts her glasses and opens a gray archival box. Her thesis is supposed to be about strategic bombing policy in the Pacific. She came here hunting for dry memos, damage assessments, production figures. What she finds instead is a story. Folder after folder carries the same stamps she has seen in old photographs: SECRETTOP, ESACRE, TIE, TIESTR, ECTIE. Many of them have been restamped with a new word in red: DDC, LASS, IF, IED. She lifts out a set of papers clipped together. On top is a title that makes her pulse jump just a little. Yeah. Below that, the date. Mid-August 1945. After Hiroshima. After Nagasaki. Her eyes slide down the page to a short, tight paragraph. She reads it once, then again, the words settling in slowly. In the event of continued Japanese resistance, the following targets are designated priority for subsequent special bomb operations. Primary Kokura. The pencil in her hand pauses above her notebook. Kokura. She knows the name vaguely from footnotes about Nagasaki. A clouded primary target. A mission diverted. But this list is different. It is not about what happened on August 9th, but about what might have happened after. She turns the page. A target map of northern Kyushu unfolds before her, almost identical to the ones that flew in the bomb bays of B-29S. Kokura is circled in black. Beside it, in tidy type, is a note about estimated readiness of additional weapons. Late August. Early September. Her breath catches. This city was not only almost the second victim, it was penciled in to be the third. Ellen flips through the rest of the folder, fingers moving faster now. There are cables from Tinian about special components in transit. Memos from Groves to the War Department about production schedules. Then, abruptly, a brief instruction from mid-August that halts preparations pending further decision by the president. You can see it with her, the shape of events that nearly existed. Across the ocean in Japan, time has not erased Kokura. It has simply layered peacetime over the memory of sirens and blackouts. Kokura, 1964. The air defense warden is no longer a warden. He is a shopkeeper now, his hair gone thin and gray. The helmets and buckets are long since put away. American uniforms no longer patrol the streets. Children buy candy with coins that bear a different era. In the evenings, he sometimes walks to the river and watches the lights of the rebuilt factories shimmer on the surface. The arsenal is gone as it was. Industry has changed. The city has grown thick around its old scars. People in Kokura have long since learned the phrase the rest of Japan uses for them. Kokura no one. Kokura's luck. They say it with a little shrug, half proud, half uneasy. The story everyone knows is simple on the day of the second bomb. The clouds and the smoke from earlier raids covered the city. The American plane could not see the target and turned toward Nagasaki instead. In his shop, the old warden has told that story 100 times. How he heard the engines, how the plane circled, how it never appeared. He never goes further than that. He does not talk about the nagging thought that has followed him for years, the feeling that they were spared by something as thin as fog. One afternoon, a younger man who studied in Tokyo brings in a newspaper. There is a small article buried near the back about newly released American documents. Target lists. Atomic plans. Kokura mentioned by name. The warden peers at the print, his reading glasses perched low. It takes him a moment to parse the bureaucratic phrasing, the foreign names. But he understands enough. It was not just that morning. His city was written down, somewhere he never imagined, on the desk of a man named Truman, in plans drawn up by generals on the far side of the world, at the top of a list for a bomb that if the war had lasted only a little longer would have come. That night he lies awake, listening to the familiar sounds, the distant rumble of trains, the clack of bicycle tires on the street, outside a radio murmuring in a neighbor's house. They all feel suddenly fragile. If you were lying there beside him, staring up at the shadowed ceiling, you would feel it too. The weird vertigo of knowing that your entire life has unspooled in the space left behind by a decision you never saw taken by people whose language you did not speak, written on paper you will never touch. Washington, the same year. In the archives, Ellen copies the Kokura target list in careful longhand into her notebook. She sketches the map circling the city as it appears on the yellowed paper. She thinks about the president who signed off on this plan and then under pressure of conscience and circumstance pulled back. She thinks of commanders on Tinian, of technical officers and scientists of a plane called Boxcar, and a city that has become a synonym for terrible fortune. Nagasaki is known to the world. Hiroshima is written in every textbook. Kokura is a shadow between them. Later, when Ellen publishes her first article, she will call it the target that vanished. Most readers will never visit Kokura. Many will never think of it again. But a few will pause at the paragraph that describes the list. She found the one with Kokura at the top under the words primary target for subsequent special bomb. They will imagine a third ruined city, a different map of post-war Japan, a history where the phrase Kokura's luck does not exist because Kokura itself does not exist. Back at his steel table in a memory from 1945 that Ellen can only reconstruct from signatures and date stamps, Caldwell once closed a file drawer on that same list, never knowing who might someday open it. Feldman, years after Tinian, will read a newspaper piece about the bombs and think with a chill how close his careful check marks came to erasing another place. And in Kokura, the old warden will lock his shop for the night, step out into streets lit by neon and traffic signals and look up at a peaceful sky. He does not pray exactly. He simply whispers the same words he has used for years without quite knowing who he is addressing. Lucky. We were lucky. What he cannot see is the full shape of the thing that almost happened to him, to his neighbors, to the tram lines and the riverside and the little apartment where his daughter once clutched his sleeve in fear of an engine she could not see. That shape lives instead in folders, in declassified lines of type and maps with circles drawn by hands that shook just a little. It lives in the knowledge that history is not only what happened but also what nearly did. Kokura's chimneys still smoke. its streets still wake and sleep. It carries its ghost quietly, the ghost of a bomb that never fell ordered for a city that never knew it was next stopped, only when surrender came and a president decided that 2 destroyed cities were enough. In the space between those decisions and the pages that recorded them, Kokura survived.